Our guest today, who is a seamstress. What? Yes, but she's turned Sunday Times bestseller, and she has taken the literary world by storm in some ways because the book that she has written has completely taken me by. Not surprised, but I've just loved it so much. I've been telling anyone. I've pitched this book so many times, literally elevator pitch. Only yesterday, I was telling a lady who I met in the lift leaving here. And I had within 3 floors, I had her convinced, and she went off to buy the book. It's called The Names. The author is Florence Knapp. What a pleasure to see you in real life. Florence, welcome to the top of the tower.
It's so lovely to be here, thank you.
How are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you.
You got in okay?
Yes.
The main thing.
Slightly late, but yeah.
No, you're bang on time for us. It's lovely to see you. Congratulations on the book. We were talking about Japan. You've never been to Japan, obviously, but this is somewhere. How have you?
I went to Japan when I was very, very... Well, I was 6, so no memory of it.
You're going to go back, though.
Yeah.
You're going to have to go back. Congratulations on The Names, which is a book that nearly never was. I mean, this is you had written a book at some stage. It kind of disappeared off the ether. And we talk about sliding doors, and this book in itself is nearly a whole sliding door in its own right.
Oh, it really does feel like that. I think when you think about the way that a story comes together or a novel comes together, it kind of presents itself to you in little bits and pieces. And you kind of think, oh, if I hadn't had that conversation or if I hadn't met that person, a whole chunk of it would have been missing and it would have gone in a different direction.
Yes.
So, yeah.
I was asked a question the other day I was doing a project that involved talking to people with neurodiversity in their lives. And one of the questions was, if you could press a bunch of buttons to go back to in time, what buttons would you press to bring you where? Isn't it a great question?
That is a fantastic question.
I reflected on it. I said,
where did you go?
Okay, so here's what I said. It was the answer was along the lines of, I'd look at all the buttons and I'd pick one to say, oh gosh, I'd go back there and say sorry to that person for doing that, or
in your own life.
In your life.
Yeah.
And I'd jump back there and I'd say, oh gosh, I think I'll go left rather than right, whatever. And then I reflected and I said, but actually I wouldn't press any of them. I'd give you back your buttons and say, if I went back and changed things, I wouldn't be where I am today.
Yeah, I think that's...
And I'm very happy where I am today.
Yes.
And I would worry that if I went back and I did that, then the other person would get knocked down by a bus, and you know what I mean?
Exactly that. It feels so precarious that we've ended up in the life that we're in with the families that we have at home, and that we're even in this room with each other. Yeah. And it's... So when I met my husband, I often think... Say, if he hadn't woken up and put on a particular band T-shirt, was the T-shirt that we ended up talking about, it's that we may have never met.
Which band?
I think it was Girls Against Boys.
Yeah, and that was the T-shirt. But if he had put on his Beatles T-shirt or whatever it might be, or his pink T-shirt, you go,
that may have been a non-starter,
I'm not into pink, so... and that would have been, the whimsy of it. And this brings us to your book, The Names, which... I don't know what it is. It reminds me of, films that I love, like It's a Wonderful Life or The Christmas Carol, or the what-ifery of it all. This is what I love about it. Do you want to do the pitch? I mean, I could do the pitch probably better than you, because even though you wrote it, I've told so many people about this. But let's
do
hear
the pitch.
Please. If you think for one minute I'm going to pitch your book to you must be kidding. But I'm actually very keen to hear how you pitch it. So,
okay, it's always lovely to hear how other people do it. But
okay.
So
I'll do it after you if you like.
Let's go there. Yeah,
you
brilliant.
first.
So, The Names is a sliding doors what-if style novel that looks at how the name a person is given can shape the course of their life. And it opens in the wake of the 1987 storm as Cora sets out with her 9-year-old daughter Maya to register the birth of her son. And her husband Gordon is a really domineering figure, and he's intending for her to call the child after him. But as she's getting nearer and nearer to the registrar's office, she's really starting to question kind of whether it can be right to impose that on this kind of newborn child. And so the story then splits into 3 depending on the name she does give him. In one version of their life, he's Bear, which is the name suggested by his elder sister because she thinks that would be soft and cuddly but also brave and strong. In another version, he's Julian, which is the name his mum set her heart on. And in a third version, he's named after his father, and he's Gordon, and a really troubled character. And it follows their lives across 35 years, and really, exactly as we were talking about before, looks at how a single decision can shape the course of a whole life. Yeah.
So every other chapter is the life story of the kid and the family with the name given by the mother to the registrar that day.
Yes.
As per your description. And suddenly now we have this book, which is remarkably short for the amount of you pack into it. I mean, it is. And I love that, because you're not handing somebody a tome saying, I recommend Dostoevsky. You're saying, no, listen, Florence Knapp, Knapp. I always spell your name out to get it right. And it's just so digestible and manageable and moving and unnerving and existentially challenging. It throws up so much and yet accessible.
I'm really pleased you
really
felt like that.
No, every time. And I suppose it also the fact that you're cleverly the Gordon, the husband. He's such a bad, mean, malevolent, and he's a doctor. He's a middle-aged GP. You didn't make him some sort of stereotypical lout. So that's what makes it also, I think, as interesting as anything else. This could be anyone, anytime, anywhere.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that, as we were talking about before, of kind of things that come in and influence you, about 6 months before I started writing the names, I'd a woman who ran a women's refuge had come to speak to a group of us and told us about her work in quite graphic detail, and I was really really disturbed by what she said, and I think it was one of those things that just kind of kept going round and round my mind. And my way of processing the world tends to either be by writing or reading. And so when I came to looking at these 3 versions of their life, I guess that filtered in of those really, really basic questions that I had, where on a logical level you know the answer, but maybe you don't feel it, of like, well, why would someone stay?
Yeah.
And why would he do that? And what would the effect on the children be to grow up in an environment like this? And so in walking alongside Cora and her children, I was able to better understand those things.
And I'm sure the person who came to talk to you, because this does have domestic violence in it, and it's very harrowing. I think you've said in the past you don't want people to dwell on the violence. By all accounts, read it, acknowledge it, see it for the horror it is. But do look at the resilience. Do look at the coming out of the other side, if it's possible. I mean, that's important too. But the most fatuous thing people say, from what I understand, having interviewed a lot of people about domestic violence down through the years, is when people say, "Why don't you just leave?" And the person who's the victim says, "Please don't say that." Of all the things, that is the hardest thing to deal with. Florence Knapp is our guest here at the Top of the Tower. We're talking about her extraordinary book called The Names. A debut novel, can you believe that? I mean, I know you did. It was a Flossie Tea Cake's Guide to English Paper Piercing, which we don't...
Piercing.
Piecing.
I didn't do any piercing.
I thought you had all the paper and you're piercing it with little tacks.
That too. With a needle.
Which is your other life, isn't it? Not piercing, but piecing. What does piecing mean?
So it's a really, it's a centuries-old method of quilt making. And it's all by hand, so no machines involved. And you have these things like hexagons and all different shapes that you wrap with fabric, and then you sew them together, and then you take the paper out at the end. And
that's your go-to. It sounds like you sounded like a priest talking about mass there. Is this your church?
It is totally I think it's that time where you can kind of contemplate.
No, I understand. It is your church. It's literally a mindful moment. All right.
Yeah.
James gets in touch to WhatsApp +44 333 I read the names in 2 sittings. It was enthralling. I'm taking notes from this interview as I'm bringing the novel to our book club meeting tomorrow night to recommend it to the group. This is the perfect book for a book club. James, I'm delighted to see that. I'm also delighted to see James as a man reading fiction, because I was reading the figures are pretty stark. 80% of women, apparently, or 80% of fiction readers and purchasers are women. I don't know if that figure is true
it's
or
interesting,
not.
because I was listening to the Rest is Entertainment the other day.
I heard the very same thing.
And Richard Osman, I think, said he's not sure where those figures have come from and how much he believes them. So I don't know. But
I think there's an element of truth to it. But Stacey says, I've spent the last week reading the names after hearing you talk about it a few months ago. Wow. Hard to read at times, but such beauty in every character's story. And that's it. You had to kind of jump in to each character. I mean, I don't know how your head managed that, but you did it. It's probably like paper piecing, but character piecing.
Exactly.
Was there an element to that?
I think there really was. So we visit each character every 7 years in turn. And I think that doing that allowed me to, firstly, it was like that I wasn't handing the reader a kind of bowl of spaghetti to try and make sense of.
Yes.
But also it allowed me to focus on those moments that were really defining for them as people, and to just do away with all the kind of everyday stuff and just really go for those moments.
And I was struck when we got in touch a little bit on Instagram, which is the beauty of Instagram. It's when social media stops being anti-social media, and it's a nice thing. And I was saying to you, there's a little strand of Irishness to it. And I was saying, was your mother Irish? Or you said nothing whatsoever.
Well, I think the thing is that I just have read so much Irish fiction that it feels like those characters and landscapes and voices, particularly if you're listening to the audiobooks as well, really live inside my head. And so when I knew that I wanted to relocate one of the narratives to somewhere else so that to make it easier for a reader to follow, an island felt like the natural choice. And when I sat down to write, those characters came alive in my head so easily.
I love that. Who do you like to read or listen to?
So Claire Keegan's probably my favourite, but I also love Alan Murrin and Paul Murray.
Paul Murray's super,
he's incredible.
Yeah.
Audrey McGee, who wrote The Colony, Fiona Scarlett.
They're all living in your head.
Sally Rooney.
Sally Rooney.
No, I think for me the thing that I really, really love is that there's a quietness and they're so assured and certain in their voice.
Yeah.
And yet they have such huge emotional impact at the same time as being quiet, and I love that.
This is it. Claire Keegan's books they're so sparse and yet full of story. Your novel, there was a competitive 13-way auction, is that right?
Yeah.
Which is really quite something. It's already been translated into 20 languages, and it's only really just come into the room. I mean, that's what's so remarkable is the speed with which did you get a whiplash from the? It's a lot.
It was so surreal. I think particularly surreal because I've been writing since 1999, and the previous book that I'd written hadn't found a home. And so you don't imagine when you've had that experience that you could possibly write anything that people would actually want.
You thought you were down and out. And then this came along. And so how did it feel when it went, as you say, 13-way auction and 20 languages and big seller as it is?
I think those things in any regular person's life are always going to feel just utterly surreal.
Yeah.
And for me, I suppose it was like that I'd written this book squirreled away in my attic, and then it feels like you've turned around and your book's there dancing on a table, and you're kind of thinking, what are you doing up there?
You're meant to be in a box in the attic, and now everyone's looking at you at the centre stage.
And I mean, it's so lovely that kind of people have given it such a kind of warm reception, but it's really shocking.
It's cinematic, obviously, so no doubt there's been a big war to make it into a movie or a TV series. Do you have a preference? Because it's going to happen, but which one would you like it to see?
Oh, I think in some ways it feels like writing's my thing, and I'd want to leave it to the filmmaker to decide what.
But as a viewer, what would you like, Florence?
Oh, as a viewer?
Yeah, would you like to see it as a series or a once-off movie?
Possibly a series, I think.
It's giving, as they say these days. It's giving TV series its own stage. But it's so beautiful.
But that would feel like a dream anyway. So you're taking me down another kind of dream.
I'm only taking you to to what's called reality. This is going to be massive, even bigger again, and it's an enormous success. You seem a little surprised by it, which is charming in some ways. But you fully deserve it. You almost have like an Irish reaction to it, where you go, oh, this whole thing I didn't really. It's been a terrible mistake.
I think for a lot of authors, we're probably more comfortable being the observer than the person in the spotlight.
That's what you do as writers.
So, and I mean, luckily it's mainly the book that's in the spotlight rather than me, apart from moments like these. But it's which is lovely.
No, it is lovely.
You.
I've been so happy to meet you and see you today because, as I say, we had a little contact now and on Instagram, but here we are live in glorious Technicolor at the top of the tower talking about The Names, which has become just one of the big hits of the year, and rightly so. It's just a remarkable achievement. I'm delighted for you.
I'm so grateful for your support. Thank you ever so much.
And it's huge in Ireland, it's huge in the UK, and it's just getting all around the world. So well done, Florence. I won't say here's to the next one. Let's just enjoy the first one for starters and see what happens after.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.